Welcome to part 2 of the UIS budget template training. In part 1, I went over an overview of the template, how to access it, and how to find what indirect costs should be entered. In this video, I will be going over the entry of a subaward, personnel, and travel costs. Budget, I am going to assume that it is a 3-year award with a maximum of $300,000 total. I am also going to assume that there is a collaborator at another institution, and I am going to cap their total at $100,000, a third of the award costs. The other institution is responsible for submitting a budget and justification to their own institution and getting that approved before it is submitted to us. And we will just enter the total number into our budget. We will need their separate budget for actual entry for the proposal, but for the budget template purpose, we just need the final numbers. By entering that first, I will have a realistic idea of what we can and cannot put on this budget. So I will scroll into the sub-award section, enter the name of our institution. We'll just call it Institution 1. And if I'm giving them $100,000 total, we're going to assume about, $33,000 a year. Give or take about $1,000. You'll notice our F&A has already been assessed. On subawards, indirect costs are assessed only on the first $25,000 of the award, regardless of how many years that award spans. So you'll notice in the first year, it is only assessed on $25,000, and in the other years, it is not assessed at all because we've reached the cap. I'm going to think about my personnel. Notice these are white cells, don't edit those. But let's say that Professor A has a base salary of $100,000. They are receiving an $11,000-ish salary per month, and we need to determine what effort they can reasonably put on this to still meet the goals of the proposed project. If Professor A does not have as full of a teaching schedule as other professors, they may put their effort on the academic year. However, if they have a full academic year and they are a 9-month employee, they can put up to 2 summer months on the award. Many awards will not ask you to differentiate between academic or summer, but for our purposes at UIS, we do need those separated. For our example, we will put an average of 1 summer month, which is 50% summer effort. And that will auto-populate into how many months are being spent on the project each year. Notice it did extend across 5 years. Because this is a 3-year project, we will enter zeros into these orange cells. That will not impact the equations in any other way. Those are highlighted orange because it is okay to enter zeros into those sections. If we were to look at our total, we see we are already getting very close to our final number. So we need to be cognizant of how much money we are putting on other areas. The goal of my project is to provide opportunities for students. That would be my next area of focus. I would be looking at my other personnel. This includes non-student employees not covered by SERS. It includes hourly students enrolled less than half-time, hourly students enrolled at least half-time, and graduate research assistants. Be aware that if you are hoping to hire a graduate research assistant, not only will you have to pay their stipend, you will also have to account for their tuition waiver. That is part of being a graduate research assistant. The dollar amount of that waiver does vary based on the student's residency status and how many credits they are taking. They can have up to 30 credits on their waiver, but it is based on how many credits they actually take in that year. For the best use of funds, I would look at hourly students enrolled at least half-time. The pay rate minimum is the state of Illinois minimum wage, which is currently $14, will soon be going up to $15. If you would like your rate to be a little more competitive and your unit does allow for it, you can increase that pay rate. Let's say I want to be more competitive for graduate students at $20 per hour. This student will work 10 hours a week for 10 weeks, which is 100 hours. If it is one employee, I would enter one employee. If I am paying $20 per 100 hours for 2 students, I would enter 2 students. Notice again, this does extend into years 4 and 5, so I would enter 0 in those numbers. Something I did forget to mention is that a 3% escalation is in every year after year 1. That is based on the typical cost of inflation, the rising cost of living. As always, I want to check in and see where I am at. We are getting very close to the $200,000 mark. If you did not notice, fringe is automatically being assessed at the correct rate. What faculty and staff that are CSRS eligible are being charged on fringe is different than a non-student employee who is not covered by CSRS, which is different than students. And that rate is dependent on their enrollment status and how much they are charged for that. Whether benefits are being used or not, it is based on eligibility. The priorities of your project are really going to direct what section you move to next. So if I am having these 2 students present at a conference and travel is expected, I'm going to go into travel next because that can get costly very quickly. Travel expenses do have to be based on allowable rates, which are published on the University of Illinois system page for business and finance. There is a section specifically for travel, for planning and booking, paying for travel, and travel reimbursements. Because we are planning, we are going to go to the planning and booking link. And you will see there are several different categories that should be considered. We are specifically going to look at transportation, hotels and lodging, and meals, starting with transportation. Travel must be the most direct route using the most economical mode of transportation, considering time, costs, and work requirements. If it is to Chicago, the train may be more effective. If it is to Boston, air travel is going to be best. So let's say we are going to fly to Boston. Information is listed here, but you are going to search using a flight search. Often Expedia is going to give you some good information where you will enter where you are going. It would help if I was in the flight area. So if I was leaving from St. Louis because it is closer than Chicago and I am going to Boston, I would select dates that are approximate because you can only go so far out. And see what that would cost for a single traveler. I would then use this to estimate what a round trip ticket would cost approximately. In transportation year 1, I would enter approximately $250. If you would like to escalate that by 3%, you are more than welcome to do so in year 2. Per diem is for meals, and that is based on the location where you will be staying. And if it is a conference where certain meals are provided, those meals would need to be subtracted from the total. Back to the business and finance page, I would click on meals, and it tells you that they are based on GSA per diem rates. I would select the proper fiscal year. I'm not going backwards, so I'm going to stay in 2024 because we are looking at Boston rates. We are going to see the lodging rates as well as the meal and incidentals. So we see that a full day would be $79, and because of new rules, the first and last day of travel would be at 75%, which is $59.25. For 5 days of travel, that would be 3 days at $79 and 2 days at $59.25. So I would do that math and enter it into our budget. The quicker math here is to take off half of a day from one of those. So we will do $79 times 4.5. In year one, that would total $356. I can also do the 3% escalation as well. And next, look at the hotel. That information is located on the same page as the meals and incidentals. And we can see that in, let's say, October, it is $322 max allowed per night. This is adjustable if you are required to stay in the conference hotel, but this is a good starting rate. So we would do 322 times however many nights. In this case, we're looking at 4. As with all of our other budget categories in travel, we are going to enter that first base rate and escalate by 3%, which we really just need to make sure is explained to the sponsor in the justification. Depending on the sponsor's solicitation, registration may be considered a travel cost. It may be unallowable and expected to be covered by the university, or it may need to go into other direct costs. Please always check the solicitation to see what is and is not allowed. But if it is allowed and registration is about $1,000 for this conference historically, we would enter that. Again, if you are escalating, please make sure to enter that. You should also be considering travel to the airport, travel from the airport to the hotel, and back. If you are using your own vehicle, that will go in local mileage. If you are using a shuttle service or a taxi or an Uber, if that's most economical, that will go in the transportation section. If you are using local mileage, that will be calculated from home base, which is either your home or the university, whichever is closer to the airport. For example, if it is 100 miles to the airport and 100 miles back, I would enter 200 into local mileage. And then if the shuttle from the airport to the hotel and hotel to the airport is $50 round trip, I would add that into my calculations if you want to escalate or not. Thank you for attending part 2 of the UIS budget template training. In video 3, we will be going over equipment costs, participant support costs, and other direct costs.